In the year 476, a Germanic officer named Odoacer walked into the imperial palace at Ravenna and told a teenage boy to take off the purple. The boy's name was Romulus Augustulus. He was 16 years old. He did not die. There was no battle. Odoacer gave him a pension of 6,000 solidi a year and sent him to live out his days in a villa in Campania, looking at the sea. And that was it. That was the fall of the Roman Empire in the West. Here is what should disturb you. Nobody at the time wrote that Rome had fallen. There are no laments from the year 477. No chronicler marks it as the end of an age. The Senate kept meeting. The consuls kept being appointed. Taxes were still collected, roads still maintained, Latin still spoken in the courts. Odoacer sent the imperial regalia back to Constantinople with a polite note explaining that the West no longer required its own emperor, and the Eastern court filed the letter and moved on. The most consequential political event in the history of the Western world happened, and the people living through it experienced it as an administrative adjustment. This is the part they never tell you. Rome did not fall. Rome was disassembled, piece by piece, over 300 years, by people who mostly wanted to join it. And by the time the last piece came off, there was almost nothing left to break. For 250 years, the way the West has understood this story came from one man. Edward Gibbon published the first volume of the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire in 1776, and he gave us the shape we still carry in our heads. A vigorous republic grows soft. Luxury corrodes discipline. Christianity drains the martial spirit and turns fighting men into monks. Barbarians pour over the frontier, and a decadent civilization, too comfortable to defend itself, collapses under its own weight. It is a magnificent story. Gibbon wrote English prose that has never been surpassed by a historian. And in its essentials, modern scholarship thinks he was wrong. He was wrong first about the timeline. Gibbon treats decline as a continuous slide starting in the 2nd century, which means he is describing 400 years of falling. An empire that takes 4 centuries to fall is not falling. It is functioning. He was wrong about Christianity. The eastern half of the empire was more thoroughly Christianized, more full of monks and bishops and theological argument, and it survived another 1,000 years. If Christianity killed Rome, somebody should explain Constantinople. And he was wrong about decadence, because we now have the archaeology, the pottery finds, the shipwreck counts, the ice core lead deposits that track mining output. The 4th century economy was not a wasteland. In North Africa, in Syria, in parts of Spain, it was booming. The villas were getting larger, not smaller. Peter Heather, writing 2 centuries after Gibbon with evidence Gibbon never had, put it bluntly. The Roman Empire did not die of natural causes. It was killed. To understand who killed it, you have to understand what Rome had been doing to its neighbors for 400 years. The Germanic peoples across the Rhine and Danube in the 1st century were not a threat. They were small, they were fragmented, they fought each other constantly, and a single Roman legion could handle any of them. Tacitus describes dozens of tribes, none of them capable of putting a serious army in the field. Now compare that to the 4th century. By then Rome faces the Alemanni, the Franks, the Goths, confederations, not tribes. Larger, better organized, better armed, capable of coordinating tens of thousands of men. What happened? Rome happened. For centuries of trading along that frontier had pumped wealth into the barbarian world. Roman coin, Roman weapons, Roman luxury goods flowed north, and whoever controlled that flow got rich, and whoever got rich could feed more warriors, and whoever fed more warriors absorbed his neighbors. For centuries of Roman diplomacy had taught them Roman politics. For centuries of Roman military service, because tens of thousands of Germans served in the legions, had taught them Roman tactics, Roman engineering, Roman logistics. The empire spent 400 years running an unintentional training program for its own executioners. This is the pattern that repeats in every imperial collapse. The periphery learns from the center. It always learns faster than the center adapts. In the summer of 376, something happened on the Danube that had never happened before. An entire people arrived at the river, and asked to be let in. Not a raid, not an invasion. Refugees. Tens of thousands of Goths, men, women, children, carts, animals, massed on the northern bank begging the Roman authorities for permission to cross. They were running from something worse. Out of the steppe had come the Huns, mounted archers with a range and a mobility that shattered every settled people they touched, and the Gothic world simply came apart in front of them. So the Goths ran to the only thing big enough to hide behind: Rome. The Emperor Valens said yes. It was a reasonable decision. Rome had settled barbarians inside the frontier many times, and Goths meant recruits and taxpayers. But then Roman officials on the ground did something that turned a manageable crisis into a catastrophe. They cheated. They withheld the promised food. They ran a market in dog meat, where the price of one dog was one Gothic child sold into slavery. Ammianus Marcellinus, who was there, records this. And the Goths, starving inside the empire, unarmed, humiliated, did what desperate people do. They rose. On the 9th of August, 378, near Adrianople, the Gothic army destroyed a Roman field army and killed the Emperor Valens. 2/3 of the Eastern army died in an afternoon. Ammianus called it the worst defeat since Cannae 600 years earlier. But the real damage was not the dead. It was that for the first time, a barbarian people was living inside the empire that Rome could not expel and could not absorb. Here is where the story stops being about battles and starts being about accounting, which is where empires actually die. The Roman state ran on a simple engine: tax the provinces, pay the army protects the provinces generate tax. It is a loop, and it works as long as it closes. Now watch what happens when you start losing territory. In 406, on the last day of December, the Rhine froze and a coalition of Vandals, Alans, and Sueves crossed into Gaul. Within 3 years they were in Spain. In 429, the Vandals crossed into North Africa, and in 439 they took Carthage. Stop there. North Africa was the richest tax province in the Western Empire and the granary that fed the city of Rome itself. When Carthage fell, the Western treasury lost a huge share of its revenue in a single stroke. Less revenue means a smaller army. A smaller army means you cannot defend the next province. Losing the next province means less revenue still. The loop that built the empire now runs backwards, and every turn of it makes the next turn worse. By the 460s, the Western Field Army is a fraction of what it was, and the emperors are not really emperors anymore. They are figureheads managed by generals who are themselves often of barbarian descent. Ricimer, Gundobad, Orestes. The purple still exists. The power behind it has moved. Odoacer in 476 was not overthrowing a functioning state. He was clearing away a piece of furniture that no longer held anything up. But the fact that we say the Roman Empire fell in 476 is itself a kind of trick, and it is worth being honest about who benefits from it. Because the Roman Empire did not end in 476. Half of it kept going. The Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from Constantinople, survived the 5th century crisis intact, and then went on for another 1,000 years. Its people called themselves Romaeoi, Romans, until the walls of Constantinople finally broke in 1453. That is 1,000 years after Odoacer. When we say Rome fell in 476, what we actually mean is that the Latin-speaking Western provinces fell. So the real question is not why Rome fell. It is why the East survived when the West did not, and the answer is not virtue. It is geography and money. Constantinople sat behind the best fortifications in the world with a sea on 3 sides. The East's wealthiest provinces, Egypt, Syria, Anatolia, were far from the Danube frontier and shielded by distance. The West's wealth sat in Gaul, Spain, and North Africa, all reachable by land or a short sea crossing from where the pressure was. And critically, the East could buy the Huns off. It had the gold. It paid Attila enormous subsidies and let him go west instead. The Eastern Empire did not defeat the crisis. It redirected it onto its own western half and then outlived it. So if the Senate kept meeting and the road stayed open, what was actually lost? This is where the archaeology gets brutal, and where Bryan Ward-Perkins made the argument that pushed back hardest against the gentle transition school. Look at the pottery. In the 4th century, a peasant in Britain ate off wheel-thrown, kiln-fired ceramics made in industrial quantities and traded hundreds of miles. Standardized. Cheap. Everywhere. By the 6th century, that pottery is gone. People are back to handmade vessels barely better than what existed before the Iron Age. Look at the coinage. The small bronze coins that let ordinary people buy small things vanish from the record, an entire monetary economy switching off. Look at the buildings. Mortared stone with tile roofs gives way to timber and thatch. Look at literacy. The casual scratch graffiti of the Roman world, evidence that ordinary people could write, disappears almost entirely. This is not a transition. This is the collapse of a complex economy into a simple one, and the people who lived through it got materially poorer, shorter-lived, and more isolated. The specialization that made Roman prosperity possible, the fact that you could be a full-time potter because someone else grew your food and a network moved goods safely, that unwound. And once it unwound, it took Western Europe roughly 1,000 years to rebuild it. So what do we take from this? The comforting version says empires fall because they grow decadent, which is comforting precisely because it implies control. Stay disciplined, stay virtuous, and you will not fall. Gibbon's moral universe, and every politician since who has invoked the fall of Rome to sell you an argument about the present. The evidence does not support it. Rome in the 4th century was not decadent. It was administratively sophisticated, economically productive, and militarily formidable. What it could not do was absorb a shock it had spent 400 years making more likely, a periphery it had enriched and trained, hit by a migration out of the steppe it never saw coming, at a moment when losing its richest province put the whole fiscal machine into reverse. It was not softness. It was a system that worked beautifully until several things went wrong at once, and then discovered it had no slack left. And notice the last thing, the thing that should genuinely unsettle you. The people living inside it did not know. There was no year in which Romans agreed that the world was ending. Each generation adjusted to a slightly diminished version of what their parents had, and called it normal, and got on with the harvest. The lights went out so slowly that nobody could name the day it got dark. That is how it actually happens. Not with a barbarian at the gate. With a pension, a villa by the sea, and a polite letter to Constantinople explaining that an emperor is no longer required.